Now look, it's not what you're saying, it's how you're saying it. If you're not prepared to calm down and talk in a reasonable, respectable way, why are you so upset? Just calm down. Why are you so angry about this? Let's talk about tone policing, specifically as I have personally experienced it, and how it is a weapon of suppression, of silencing, a sneaky little underhanded way to disengage from what is being said because you don't like it, by using how it is being said to reject an idea, to deride, to disparage, and to scorn the speaker. Hello again, I am Blunty. I'm autistic, and while I was only finally diagnosed at 26 years old, I have indeed spent my entire life as an autistic person, living the autistic experience whether I knew it or not, which also means I've spent my whole life being tone policed, as many autistic people do. And I'm talking about this now here because tone policing was just used against me to kick me out of a community space that claims itself to be inclusive, welcoming, and in their own words, actions and comments directed at someone's gender, sexual orientation, appearance, race, religion, or language are unwelcome. You may have noticed, as I did, neurodiversity and mental health issues are not among the things they discourage being targeted. This will come into play, but my exposure of the hypocrisy, bias, and abelism of the Palia Comminity team will need to wait. Context first. And before we can get to how I experience tone policing, we need to define it. And then we need to acknowledge how it has been weaponized against many more minority groups than merely us neurodivergent peeps. So, short form. Tone policing is a communication tactic, a weapon used by those in positions of power, of privilege, to silence people who do not have the same level of power and privilege by focusing on the tone rather than what is being actually said. And in many cases, especially in places where text is the core medium, this is an imagined or inferred tone, projected by the reader onto something that the speaker may have never even intended. It is used to silence people, it is used to deliberately derail conversations and distract, or to entirely disengage from discussions in progress entirely. While I see it in subtle ways, people like rights activists see it very brightly indeed, and all of the time. It has been used against feminists, against people of color, against LGBTQIA communities, especially against trans people most recently and most loudly. In fact, I'll leave a link in the down below to an excellent video essay that tears a whole new wound into the tone policing of trans people, in particular that they face in political discussions when the demand comes in for civility from victimized trans people, while their basic human rights or rights to exist at all are not just called into question but actively legislated against. They're told to just calm down and keep it civil. Any loud protesting gets called disorderly or aggressive or violent. Meanwhile, the people in privilege have the privilege of presenting calm and civil because their lives aren't the ones under direct attack, so that's pretty easy to stay calm when you're the person in power and not the person trying to be legislated out of existence. It is much less literal life and death for me, although we'll talk about health later. But it is every bit as soul-crushing and frequently fills me with anxiety and frustration, hopelessness, frequently succeeds in making me feel entirely unwelcome, even in spaces that like to imagine themselves as kind and receptive and accepting and open to all kinds of different people and diversity. I am frequently tone policed, especially in text-based communications, which only makes it more frustrating because how do I control that? People accuse me of being mad or angry when I am, in fact, perfectly calm. Chill, even. It verges on gaslighting half the time, because even if I say, no, you're misunderstanding me, you've misinterpreted what I'm saying or how I'm saying it, I'm, in fact, perfectly calm, I'm just trying to explain something here, they just keep claiming that I'm upset or angry and I should calm down or whatever. People accuse me of being rude or confrontational when all I am doing, from my point of view, indeed and intent, is being as straightforward, as honest, as clear as I can be. I spend so much time being misunderstood, I often go to great lengths to generate more detail, more nuance, more notes and asides in a desperate effort to give as much context as I can in the draining hope to be simply understood for what I am saying. I try and use GIFs or emoticons, context footnotes, anything, just clawing desperately at the hope of being clear enough to have someone not just imagine an offensive or aggressive confrontational tone somewhere in there in how I said it, and thus ignoring what I actually said. Or even worse still, have them, reading something I wrote and imagining secret between the lines readings that people like me simply do not generate. We don't do that. Our brains literally don't do that. Autistic people like me say what we mean, and we mean what we say. We do not speak in secret codes. We don't plant secret between the lines messaging. I am neurologically incapable of conversing like that. That is not the way my brain goes from idea to language to expression. It doesn't happen. But neurotypical people do that all day, every day. They're saying things to each other by saying different things. A secret code, assumed to be implicit. I hear them talk to each other about what other people have said to them and what they really think it really means, reading between the lines. They lie, basically. They lie all the time. They say things they don't mean with the implicit understanding that someone else will read between the lines and understand what they really mean. And unless you live in my world, unless you have a brain that is wired like mine, those people just don't even seem to believe that they're lying. They don't see it in themselves. These people just accept that this is how people talk. And so, being in the privileged position of being the majority as they are, they don't even think about any other way to communicate. They don't believe some people are just way more honest by default, by nature. It's complete lack of empathy on their half, actually, utter and complete inability and worse, unwillingness to be empathetic towards us. Unless people talk the way they talk, we get dismissed, derided, mocked, silenced, and shunned. They get to ignore what you're trying to say because they don't like how it's being said, or project and imagine certain emotionally charged tones over it where none exist, and then they get to ignore it and dismiss you. If someone speaks without the filter of politic, the dance of comfortable lies, the weaving of secret dishonest messaging, it makes them uncomfortable to be that close to such raw honesty. I think perhaps it's because it reminds them of how dishonestly they talk all the time. And I know, any neurotypicals in the audience out there, I know you're thinking, oh, I don't do that. That's not me. That's not dishonest. It's called being polite. You're wrong. You all do it. I promise you. All of you. The number of times I have typed out something with what, in intent, is a simple fact-based informative block of text trying to answer a question or respond to an opinion that I have a different perspective on, or just, correcting someone's misunderstanding or something that I happen to have some knowledge of. And have been met with the reaction as if I just kicked a puppy while pouring acid in their grandmother's teacup. It's wild. Or I get accused of simply being angry simply because they project fury in place of directness. Because in their minds, people only ever actually say what they're thinking without filter when they are furious and yelling it. Because that's how neurotypicals filter. Everything they say is dishonest until they get so mad, so carried away with their emotional outbursts, they can't automatically filter anymore. So they blurt out what they're actually thinking. So honesty and fury are joined as far as they're concerned. That's why they see people like me, direct, honest communicators, as angry so often, especially in text when you can't account for my tone of voice, my body language, my facial expressions, all of which I generate in the hopes of communicating more freely. I'm not this animated in real life in having a conversation. I do it deliberately when I'm on camera because it helps that communication. We're going to talk more about this a little bit later as well. I can't even tell you how exasperating it is to be met basically every single day of your life by at least one person who refuses to engage in an honest discussion about something because they imagine I'm boiling with rage and use that as an excuse to derail or disengage from the conversation. It's so frustrating. I'm not mad most of the time, but I am exasperated a lot of the time. Now's the part where you tell me to just change the way you type. If it's such a problem so frequently, just alter your behavior. I get told to alter myself to make someone else more comfortable, to appease someone else's expectations. So here's the thing with all of that. In autism, we call changing our presented outward behaviors so as to avoid getting singled out, so we can fit in, so we can be accepted in groups and in public or at work or whatever. We call that masking. And it's a survival tactic most of us learn instinctively just to protect ourselves. We put on an act, a performance, a constructed identity, a behavior pattern so we don't get rejected just for existing. But this whole masking thing, it's hard. It is exhausting. And the challenge of suppressing who we are, what we are, our natural state of being, hiding our autistic traits is not just exhausting mentally, but physically too. It's a performance. Doing it can and will lead to more stress. It makes us feel constantly uneasy. It triggers feelings of loneliness and isolation as in the performance of this, we realize we're only accepted for as long as we can keep up this masking. If we ever let it drop, we know we'll be rejected, and that'll mess with your head. It massively increases the rates of depression and anxiety disorders amongst us, and almost inevitably, when we are exhausted by it, it leaves us extremely vulnerable to burnout and meltdowns and shutdowns, and leaves me personally extremely vulnerable to visual, tactile, and auditory overload. Because I'm so drained from masking, I can't filter the sensory overload anymore, and it'll shut me down physically, mentally, functionally. I just can't. I've made a video on shutdowns before. I'll link it to it in the down below, trying to describe what it feels like and how traumatic it is. It is, frankly, horrifying. It's miserable, and repeated and frequent shutdowns or meltdowns have been shown in at least a few studies to literally cause actual permanent damage to our nervous systems and neurological systems. So yeah, unnecessarily masking just so someone else doesn't have to think about how some people might not talk the way they do. How about fuck that for a joke? How about instead we ask these people to not just assume things, to imagine a tone, to project emotion onto other people's messaging. We're the minority here. We're the victims here. We're the ones at risk to both our mental health and even our physical health. So how about you change to accommodate us? It's so much less work for you to just not do something. That's what we're asking you to do. We're not asking you to do something extra. We're asking you to not do something, not make assumptions like that. It's one less thing for you to do, and it won't damage your mental or physical health in doing it. Look, it's not what you say, it's how you say it. No, actually, it is how you imagine I'm saying it, and I will not take responsibility for your imagination, and certainly not at the risk of my own well-being. Thank you very much. How's that for tone? So, let me tell you what triggered this little rant specifically. I've been thinking about making a video like this for a while, but there's one particular thing that happened that said, okay, now's the time to talk about it. For a few weeks now, leading up to the open beta of a video game I've spoken about here on the channel a few times already, Palia. I've been hanging out on the official Discord server, getting a measure of the community, meeting people, talking with them, learning, what the whole jam is about, learning the vibe, learning everything I can about the game, and in turn spending a large amount of my time feeding back what I have learned in order to help new people who are constantly flooding in because the hype in this game is just piling up, just trying to be helpful. I like feeling helpful. Most of us do, right? But there's at least one mod there that seems to have some sort of issue with me personally. This space is intended to be open, friendly, and wholesome, and appropriate for people as young as 13, the minimum age Discord terms of service allow. So no worries there. I can play by those rules. I don't swear. I don't make lewd jokes. Basically, it's the same rules as if I'm around the children of friends. So I don't, teach them new words. But at least at some point, a mod deleted a message that I made using the word daddy, followed by a stock copy-paste message the mods like to repeat about keeping things clean and family safe and all that sort of stuff. The mod considered the word daddy to be indecent for a 13-year-old to hear. I want you to sit with that one for a little minute. Have a little think about that one. The word daddy and a child. The mod considered that simply because someone somewhere might think it was a kink thing, which sure, in some contexts and subcultures it sure can be, but the context in which I was using the word, we were at the time talking about a particular NPC's dad vibes and dad bod. If you can explain how that is unsafe for even a sheltered, homeschooled 13-year-old, I would love to hear it. Anyway, I laughed it off as something being ridiculous. The mod's a clown. Who cares? Whatever. I didn't snipe back at her. I made a joke and moved on. Who cares? But then came a point where another user, a regular person, not a mod, had taken to tone policing me frequently and consistently. The usual stuff, claiming simple statements were rude or calling me angry. And when, obviously nothing could be further from the truth. The original exchange that triggered them on this was simply me correcting a little ignorance on their part. I think it was about how servers work or something. And truth be told, I don't remember what the original exchange was. I just remembered how they acted towards me afterwards. It was something innocuous anyway. But anyway, after that exchange, and for days afterward, consistently, any time they and I were active at the same time in the server, they'd keep making these little snide, passive-aggressive little swipes at me, telling other users, oh, don't listen to him, he's always angry, oh, he's at it again. Just pissy little tone policing stuff, and never directly at me, just kind of about me to other people. I simply ignored them completely. But after a few days of this happening all the time, every day, tiring of this behavior, I directed a message directly at them, simply asking, without insult, without aggression, to knock it off because, to use the exact word I used at the time, tiresome. So all I did was flatly ask someone, a specific user, to stop taking consistent, repeated, passive-aggressive swipes at me at every opportunity, basically at any time I posted something on the Discord, and I also reported that behavior to the mods. But instead of my attacker being warned about that behavior, I was muted, banned from interacting on the server for 24 hours, for merely asking someone to stop belittling me to other users. I've been tone policed by a few specific members of the community before. It was nothing new, either there or in my life. I'd even explained to the community more than once what my deal was when it came to communicating and why it may seem, my direct tone might be seen as rude to others, but nothing could be further from the truth. Look at the example I'm setting behavior-wise and helping as many users as I can, consistently as I can. Take your cue of my tone from that, not what you imagine I might say. So I spent some time explaining autism, explaining tone policing and this kind of stuff, only to be told, and this is another classic little jab from neurotypicals, this insidious little thing, I was told that I was just using autism as an excuse to be rude without consequences. My cousin has autism and he is always quiet and polite. Firstly, shut up, Rebecca. Secondly, not every autistic person is identical, especially when it comes to how we communicate, you ignorant bigot. That's basically, I can't be racist, I have a black friend of the neurotypical behaviors. At this point, it seemed pretty clear to me that at least one of the mod team was hardly impartial when it came to me. I made an official report of what I saw as an abuse of power at worst, and at most, being at my most generous, it was just a misunderstanding of context. I got zero help on the issue. They refused to listen even, and refused to acknowledge my report, and nothing was done. And finally, the final straw. Right now, I'm banned for a week, kicked off the server completely. For what, you might ask? Well, the initial report claimed it was for linking a video, one of my own videos, something I did very occasionally in the server when I had something in that video to answer something someone was asking. And long before I posted anything about my videos, this isn't a self-promotion ban thing, I asked the mods what the policy was on, posting your own content. And they said as long as it's contextually appropriate and was intended as informational, it was fine. So that's how I approached using any content I made. I just linked it when it was appropriate and it contained useful information for a specific user. In this case, it was specifically to address and help answer a complicated question from a new user who was asking about the mechanics of the game's servers, of matchmaking, of instancing, and all that kind of stuff, which I'd just done a video deep diving on. I linked the video, I even timestamped the specific part with the information requested, and some mod, I'm guessing the one who thinks daddy is a filthy word, unfit for children to see in print, deleted the post and then delivered me a week ban without discussion. The automated bot message informing me of the ban claimed it was for a NSFW thumbnail. You want to see the thumbnail? It's this one. This is the thumbnail that is not safe for children to look at. This is the thumbnail for the video that I got banned for posting. And so I contacted the dev help desk via email on the issue. I explained it much like I have here. And when I got a response, I was told that I'd have to make my complaint to the Discord mod team. Which, no, the mod team are the issue I'm complaining about. Reporting an issue about them to them would seem to be a little bit pointless. Also, it's impossible to contact them because I can't DM anybody on that Discord without belonging to the same server on the Discord, so stupid advice that I can't follow even if I wanted to. So I told them, no, I can't do that. The issue is the mods. The mods are the problem. I'm reporting. I'm telling you about it. To which I eventually got a reply, and I'll quote this to be really accurate here. After careful consideration, we will be upholding the moderation decision from the Palia Discord for a temporary ban of 7 days. We acknowledge your history of contributing meaningfully to the conversation. However, we cannot ignore the multiple incidents of rude behavior. We must acknowledge the frequency of incivility and must prioritize the collective well-being of our community. So let's just catch up here. The 7-day ban I received originally claimed dishonestly to be the fault of a NSFW thumbnail for a video. Now that's being retconned into being for a history of incivility, which I dispute with my entire whole heart. They changed the reasoning behind the ban because the original reason was a lie and demonstrably indefensible. But the Palia Comminity team, the mods, still insisted on having me banned anyway because they want to tone police me now, using my manner of speaking to target me, criticizing a subjective manner in which I supposedly express myself in text, but not the actual substance of my contributions, my continuing contributions, choosing to punish and isolate and dismiss me for that reason, for the imagined emotional tone of a text-based medium. All right. I got the message loud and clear, Palia devs. There is a personal vendetta from your moderation team and community team against me specifically, an ableist attack on an autistic member of their so-called wholesome and welcoming community. Well, welcoming if you're not neurodivergent, it seems. No understanding or patience there. Like I've been talking about, tone policing is very common way of attacking and dismissing all kinds of minorities like autistic people. I've dealt with it my entire life, whether I knew the name for it or not, and it's very disheartening to be rejected from a wholesome community where I've spent tremendous amounts of time recently investing in being helpful, educational, friendly, being a useful member of that community, an active member of that community. To see a supposedly understanding community that is led by extremely ableist people, ready and willing to abuse their power over someone they don't like because of how someone talks, not what they're talking about, and for them to be fully backed by the dev team in such actions. Dude, talk about a gut punch. That's properly upsetting. So as I promised them, here I am to warn my own audience about the gross abuses of power the Palia Community team is willing to execute, excuse, tolerate, condone, and the vile ableism they permit in their community. There is no other way around it. And I know for a fact there are going to be people in the comments of this very video going, oh, but you are rude and you are aggressive and you are... You weren't listening to anything I said, did you? Stop imagining emotional tone on text. If I tell you, actually, no, I'm not angry, I'm perfectly calm, you're misreading the intent of that tone, believe me. Why would I lie about that? If I want to be rude, I am fully capable of being rude. I'm autistic. I don't tend to lie. I'm not very good at lying when I do lie. I say what I mean and I mean what I say. I'm an Australian. I have no issue in letting someone know when I'm pissed off. At all. I have no reason to lie about not actually being angry. What does that do for me? What does that serve me? Nothing. So not only are they tone policing, they're calling me a liar. So it's a double insult. I really, really despise being called a liar, by the way. As most autistic people do, we have a very strong, often very black and white notion of justice and right and wrong and morality, much less grey in our world than the typical neurotypical concept of, right and wrong and justice and all that sort of stuff, which is why we get our backs up about stuff so often. Because if we believe something, we believe it entirely. And if we hold an opinion, it's not an opinion we go, oh yeah, that sounds about right. That'll be my opinion. It's an opinion we've held because we've gone and researched it. We've gone and thought about it. We've gone and dissected it. We've looked at it from every angle and decided what position we're going to take on that. Because that's how we process information naturally. We take it all in and we process every little bit of it manually. That's part of what autism is in the brain. It's an entirely different way of processing input. Sensory input, informational input, we process it manually, piece by piece, which means we mean what we say and we say what we mean. Thank you for making it all the way through the video. Thank you to the patrons scrolling up above there, of course. Now that I've vented this, hopefully I can stop hyper-focusing on it for the rest of the day and get some other actual work done. Wish me luck.